A very good evening. So, at the outset, I would like to thank Conceptual Anesthesia and Dr. Janvi for giving me this opportunity. The talk for today is ultrasound guided central neuraxial blocks. And I'm Dr. Parekh here. I'm consultant anesthesiologist at PD Hinduja Hospital and Medical Research Center, Khar. I have been working here since last 3 years, and I have pursued my regional anesthesia fellowship from St. GS Medical College, Mumbai. So let us begin with the topic now. Before going with the ultrasound guided central neuraxial blocks, let us delve into the history of spinal and epidural. So in 1885, Professor James Leonard Corning first described the epidural anesthesia. And then in 1898, Professor August Bayer performed the first intrathecal anesthesia in the history. So central neuraxial blocks, the spinal and epidural, these are the bread and butter for the anesthesiologist. And normally, traditionally, it has been done by identification of the interspinous space, by palpation and tactile localization of bony landmarks, and we identify a particular space and introduce our needle. So the most classical way to approach lumbar spinal or epidural is we identify the Tuffier's line, which is also called as the intercrestal line. It's a virtual line which connects the highest points of the iliac crest, and generally it intersects the spine at the level of L4 spinous process or L4 L5 intervertebral space. However, how accurate it is. So most of the times we feel that we are perfectly or consistently puncturing at L3, L4 interspace, but that is not true. So there are a lot of studies which have been done and it supports our findings. Just a second. Yeah. So this was a study which was done in 2019 and it was about accuracy of Tuffier's line identification by palpation method, and it was done in obese, pregnant and control groups. So they identified that and they concluded that the palpation method was inaccurate for L4, L5 vertebral interspace, specifically in obese with or without pregnancy. This was another study which was about vertebral level of Tuffier's line measured by ultrasonography in parturients, and in this study it was measured in a lateral decubitus position. They also came to conclusion that the vertebral levels were more capillary in parturient women compared to the non-parturient women. So subjectively, what we felt that by palpation of the Tuffier's line, that is corresponding to the L3, L4 interspace or L4, L5, but it was not correct. And these were their findings. So they compared the pregnant and non-pregnant patients. There were 40 patients in each group. And as we can see that in pregnant patients, the Tuffier's line by ultrasound marking, the corresponding point was at L2, L3, L3, L4, and between at the level of L3 interspace. So in most of the pregnant patients, the Tuffier's line corresponded to the higher space compared to what it usually corresponds. And as we can see here, that this is the red zone. As the level which was intercepted by the ultrasound, it was correspondingly higher as compared to the traditional identification of the Tuffier's line. Now, similar study has been performed in an elderly woman, and this was published in Korean Journal of Anesthesia, and they concluded that the vertebral level of Tuffier's line determined with ultrasound measurement in a left lateral decubitus flexed position was more capillary again in elderly patients compared to those in control group. And they mentioned that we should consider that needle could be inserted at higher level than expected. Similar to the findings of the previous study, there were 50 patients in each group. And as we can see that in most of the patients, the Tuffier's line was at higher level, like at the level of L3 lower vertebral body, or at the level of L2, L3, or at the level of L2 upper or lower vertebral body. So this was the red zone corresponding to the normal Tuffier's line. So what is the significance or the clinical application of all these studies? So all of us know that the spinal cord usually ends in conus medullaris at the level of L1 vertebral, vertebral body. And this was a study which was a cadaveric study which was performed in 7 cases, and they identified the damage to the conus medullaris following spinal anesthesia. And in the cadaveric dissection, as we can see, they mentioned that the conus medullaris, normally what it is supposed to end at the level of L1 vertebral body. In around 30 to 40% of the patient, it ended at L2 level, at the upper border of L2, or at the up to L2 lower body border. So there is a risk of spinal cord injury if we puncture the spinal cord, in case if we are putting a needle at a higher level. So what are the most high risk category group of patients? As I mentioned, they are morbidly obese patients, in pregnant patients, elderly, patients with spinal anatomical deformities, or patients who are posted for any other surgery and we are giving spinal after he has been operated for a spine surgery. Now let us come to the advantages of ultrasound in central neuraxial blocks. So it's a completely non-invasive technique. There is no risk of radiation exposure. It's a bedside tool. It can be repeated, reproduced multiple times. So that is an added advantage. And definitely it increases the success rate. So what are the applications? For what all purpose we can use ultrasound? As we can see, it helps us to identify the midline. It helps us to identify the appropriate intervertebral level, that whether we are performing the spinal or epidural at the level of L1, L2 or L3, L4 and so on. It also helps us to identify the needle insertion angle and the trajectory, whether we need to angulate our needle or our needle should be perfectly horizontal and so on. And it also helps us to identify the depth at which we will identify or we will get our epidural and the intrathecal space. So we can to the epidural or the intrathecal space. I'll come up to that in the further slide. Also, it helps us to guide for certain anatomical variations like deficit in ligamentum flavum, spinal deformities like patients having kyphosis, scoliosis, or as I mentioned in patients who have been operated for spine. So about the incidence of ligamentum flavum midgaps, this was a study, again, it was a cadaveric study which was performed, and they identified that the incidence of midline gap of ligamentum flavum, it was highest at the level of L1, L2, around 22.2%. So most of us have always experienced that while we are performing a spinal or epidural, specifically when we are doing the epidural, we don't get a classical give way and suddenly the CSF flow comes. So in those patients, there is a probability or there is a possibility that the ligamentum flavum, there is a deficit in the center. So this is the fused ligamentum flavum. And here, as you can see, there is a deficit. And in this study, they mentioned that the gaps are more frequent at the level of L1 and L2. And using the midline approach, one cannot therefore solely rely on ligamentum flavum to impede entering the epidural space in all the patients. So with the help of ultrasound, we can reduce the number of attempts. We can reduce the number of passes. There is a less incidence of vascular injury. So now coming to number of attempts and number of passes. So what is number of attempts? Is you're putting a spinal needle inside, you're pricking the patient and the spinal needle is going in. You're hitting the bone, you're removing the needle completely and you're taking another attempt. And number of passes is you've inserted the needle, you've hit the bone, you have not removed the needle completely and you have redirected the needle. So that corresponds to the number of passes. It also shows that with the help of ultrasound, there is a reduced pain score in patients. There are less complications and improved patient satisfaction. About the procedural time, yes, at the start, when you start performing the ultrasound guided spinal or epidural, definitely it has a higher learning curve. So you might take more time in the beginning. But when you compare over a period of time, the outcome in the end result is definitely better and the procedural time also comes down. So in spite of so much benefits, why is it not utilized regularly? So all of us have most of the times heard from our seniors that we have been practicing spinal or epidural since almost more than 30 years, 40 years, and they have been using the traditional landmark guided techniques. So it definitely has a higher efficacy, and that's why it is underutilized still. Coming to the complications of central neuraxial blocks. So this was a third national audit project which was published in 2009. and it mentioned that the incidence